welcome back to Storytime with Captain Xavier. I am Chaylo Laurino, and I play Captain Xavier here on YouTube and various other places, but this story is not going to actually be about Captain Xavier. You've once again voted, well, I only gave you options for D&D, but it's another one of my D&D stories from back when I played D&D in college many years ago. Played with one of my oldest friends as well as his sister and a bunch of her friends. And when possible, I would play a Dwarven Cleric. And if it made sense, I would play the son of my previous Dwarven Cleric. And I ended up with a fairly long lineage of Dwarven Clerics, all going back to the patriarch of this particular line, which was the dwarf from my last month's story, the World's Largest Dungeon. Now, it was decided that he did make it out of that dungeon eventually, alive, but he was the only one who made it out. And he ended up with fairly severe PTSD from having all of the party members constantly die. And so it eventually became the motto of the family of that Dwarven Cleric, that line of Dwarven Clerics. Their motto became, "No one in this party dies without my permission." And they got really good at being combat clerics and making sure that no party members died. We'll murder you. And this was the story that you guys chose. You chose the Ravenloft campaign, which really was the next in line. I think it might have even been the next campaign. No, I think it was if it wasn't the next campaign, it was one of the next campaigns, where I played the son of Theoborn from the World's Largest Dungeon, and Kestra, who had played the halfling that I threw through the door in the World's Largest Dungeon, she decided to play my dwarf's sister, so the daughter of my previous Dwarven Cleric, which made for an absolutely magnificent dynamic between those two characters, because the sibling rivalry that we got to play was so much fun and led to so many just hilarious lines and wacky hijinks, and I remember almost none of them. This was at least 15 years ago now. I've gotten old. But it was, like I said, it was the Ravenloft campaign, which, unless you were not paying even remote attention, was very clearly going to be primarily undead, because the name Ravenloft just screams vampire. And so there's almost certainly going to be all sorts of necromancers and zombies and skeletons and who knows what else, but it's going to be undead. And that really didn't affect my player design, because I was going to play a Dwarven Cleric, and there's few things quite as good at killing the undead as Dwarven Clerics. I mean, if you were a really specialized ranger focusing purely on undead, you might be able to do pretty good, but murder you! Murder you! Ha! Anyway. Yeah. So I was going to play Dwarven Cleric anyway. Kestra decided to play a fighter, a Dwarven fighter, which is also pretty much going to be good at killing whatever you want killed. The other members of the party chose other options that were not nearly as specialized towards the killing of the undead. I think we had a rogue that specialized in sneak attack and daggers, which you can't, sneak it. I don't think you can't crit the undead, and they generally don't worry about being stabbed because they're already dead. I think we had a ranger that was also primarily, might have been slashing, might have been, no, it was ranged, it was arrows. And again, undead don't really care. Oh, you shot it with an arrow, great, now there's a zombie with an arrow sticking out of it. I shoot the skeleton with an arrow, it passes through harmlessly, he's a skeleton. And then I think we had some kind of an arcane spellcaster, a sorceress or something, that also, the magic options that they went with did not lend themselves well to the killing of undead. So the party was a little wibbly. But we had the two dwarves who were well prepared for this. So we roll into this town, this village that's been, struck by some undead blight, and everybody's dead, and there's zombies all over the place. And this horde of zombies come rushing at us, and it's just mook zombies, practically NP, just nothing, level 1 mook level. Obviously, it was just a matter of the whole town has been turned into zombies and they're all going to attack you and you have to murder them all, and it's horrible, and what evil would do such a thing? We must find it and thwart it. But it wasn't supposed to be a serious challenge. And me and my sister, we just mow through them. We had to have killed a dozen zombies each. I mean, it was basically one hit, one kill from both of us. She's using a great sword. I think I was using a dwarven war axe, and we were just going right through them like it was nothing. And meanwhile, the other 3 members of the party, the ranger, the rogue, and the sorceress, are all getting their butts handed to them by a single zombie. Because unless they roll max damage, they can't overcome its damage reduction. And the sorceress didn't have any good attack spells, or she used the 2 that she had and then was out. Because we were early level. Meanwhile, yeah, the fighter and I are just mowing through. And there'd been a lot of talk about Dad and you know, how, you know, he told us that what adventures were going to be like, and we all thought he was crazy. It's like, you know, he had a twitch of just going, they just keep dying. It's like they want to die. You can't keep them from dying. Why are they so stupid? And we get through, she and I, we've mowed through 20 zombies at least. There's heaps of bodies, and we're just... I don't know what Dad was talking about. These things aren't so hard. Like, yeah, weird. And then we look over and we see the other 3. The halflings jumped on this zombie's back and is stabbing it repeatedly. There's half a dozen arrows sticking out of it. The sorceress is cowering in the corner crying. And we look at this and I go, you know, I'm not so sure Dad was crazy. Huh. Should we help him? Let's let him struggle a bit more. And they all nearly died. I had to heal him back up, and the fighter just walked over and just took the head off and said, quit screwing around. We've got stuff to do. And there was more of that, and more zombies, and obviously more dangerous undead and weird creatures. And through it all, there was always, between us, realizing, I don't think Dad was crazy. Just more and more of watching these party members just struggle. And it wasn't their fault. I mean, in a non-undead campaign, those characters would have worked great. The ranger and the rogue would have made a fantastic combination of range and close-up knife work. Sorceress, normally her powers would have worked well against anything, but we were fighting nothing but undead. So, you know, between the damage reduction and the lack of being able to crit and, you know, all of this stuff that just doesn't work against the undead, they were just really struggling. And it was humorous. And they were, you know, understandably slightly frustrated by it. And I think a couple of them ended up dying. I don't remember the exact details. But the sibling rivalry just continued to play into it, because it was decided that Dad liked me because I had followed him into the church, into the world of being a cleric. And Mom liked the sister because she'd become, you know, she'd been a fighter as opposed to, you know, all that religious foldy-roll. And Mom hadn't wanted us to become adventurers because she'd seen what it had done to our father, but, you know, she couldn't stop us. It was in our blood, and sent us forth with her blessing, and Dad was just, well, we thought he was crazy. And by the end, we were absolutely certain that, no, he's right. They just keep dying. You just can't, they die, and somebody comes and replaces them, and they're just as dumb, and they die, and why? Why are people so stupid? But my 2 favorite things that I absolutely remember happening, because like I said, it was 15 years ago, and it's all a blur, but there were 2 very specific events. We got to the church, because where else are you going to go looking for an evil necromancer in a city that's overrun with zombies? You're going to go to the church. So we went to the church, and sure enough, evil necromancer at the altar, and he was like a level 3 boss or something. This was, like I said, we started at we started at a higher level than that, but whatever it was. He was very clearly, you know, a mid-level, low-level boss. But he was also very clearly a boss. So there was going to be some potentially nasty stuff going down. And, again, most of the party got hung up fighting one mook, whereas Sis and I just kicked the door in and just waded in. And there was a room full of zombies off to one side, and I charged in after them and was just hacking them to pieces. And my sister decided to go after the boss, just charge him. And try to take him out, since he's obviously you know, an arcane spellcaster of some kind. Hitting him in the face with a greatsword, probably going to be all we're going to need. So she charged in, and he hit her with a spell. And it was a low-level, easy save spell, but if you failed your save, you just died. It was a save or death, but the save was like 7 or something. It was ridiculously low. But she failed her save. By 1, and just died. At which point, this was the first time Kestra had ever played a dwarf. And so I remembered something that she had forgotten, but decided to roleplay it instead. And so my character suddenly sticks his head out of the door of the room that he's fighting. Go, Sis, you're a dwarf. You have a +2 save against spells. Get out! Quit being such a drama queen. This is why Dad never loved you. And went back to the fight. And Kestra checked. Is like, oh yeah, +2 saves against spells. I'm a dwarf. Okay. So she ended up making the save by 1. This is why Dad never loved you. Yeah, and she would come back with, yeah, this is why Mother wouldn't hug you. You're such a... Yeah. Fun stuff. So she gets up and charges him and hits him with the greatsword and crits and rolls max damage and just cuts him in half from clavicle to hip. Just... Splort, splort, splort. Fun times. So we killed the main book, and we end up in the castle. We're hunting some evil vampire of some sort, of course. And we run into one of his mooks. And at this point, it was a long campaign, and we leveled up quick. And my character had managed to get a... I can't remember now the exact combination of things that allowed it. But it allows you to... I think it's a metamagic feat that allows you to turn a touch spell into a ray. So it goes from being a touch attack to a ranged touch attack. I think it's called Reach Spell. Something like that. I found it in some obscure manual. And somebody out there will probably remember it or will try to inform me that I was using it wrong or whatnot. But ran it by the GM, or the DM. DM was okay with it. Whatever the combo was, it did work. Anyway, we end up fighting this nasty undead of some kind. It might have been a vampire, it might have been something else. There's a lot of weird undead in D&D. But it could fly. And that made it really hard for me and the fighter to be able to properly engage it. Because it was just hitting us with nasty spells. Our one spellcaster was fairly worthless. Our ranger, shooting undead with an arrow, wasn't really cutting it. At that point, I think she'd picked up some more weapons. But they were still, they were either melee or they were still, arrows of some kind. And so we just weren't having any luck. And then I realized, looking at the combination of spells that I had and the feats that I had and the things that I could do, I hit it with heal as a ranged touch attack. Which healing hurts the undead and just one-shotted it because it failed its save. It was, again, a low save, relatively speaking, but he rolled like a 2. And just, poof. Well, that was anticlimactic. So it was fun. We didn't end up completing that particular adventure. We never did get to the big boss. At least I don't, if we did, I don't remember it. I don't think the heal was the big boss. I'm pretty sure it was a lieutenant. And then we ended up switching campaigns for whatever reason. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the brother-sister relationship roleplay, because Kestra and I had a very similar, slightly sibling-like relationship, where we'd give each other grief, but it was loads of fun. After that first throwing of the halfling through the door, that kind of cemented the nature of our relationship from then on forward, and I enjoyed it. I miss her. I think she lives in Chicago now, which is where my father's from. I could be wrong. I don't know. Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. So, stories for next time. There is, of course, the 2 other stories from last time. I'm going to go ahead and put them back on. So there was another son of the original dwarf, of Theoborn from the World's Largest Dungeon. And that was from the Freeport campaign, which involved guns. My character was into guns. He was a dwarven cleric, but he was into guns. The return of Francis, the retarded Minotaur from the World's Largest Dungeon, and an albino insane goblin sorceress. And a very confused paladin. So that's one of the options, the Freeport campaign. The Witch Queen, which I believe was the son or the grandson of one of those 2 dwarves. So it was either the grandson or the great-grandson of the World's Largest Dungeon dwarf, I think. But the Witch Queen, which was a that was by far my favorite campaign that I've ever gotten to play, and then my favorite character I've ever gotten to play. The last one, I think I'll go with... it's actually really a series of stories, but they're all fairly short, but they all work together. And that is the history of the kitty pike blocks that the crew has done, starting with its origin back in the Bristol Ren Fair and culminating at Greenwood. And ultimately with the crew being hired as hired by colleges to do guest lectures on pike and musket warfare. So those are the options: the Freeport campaign, the Witch Queen campaign, or the history of the crew's kitty pike blocks. Vote down in the description. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that usual. Help the channel grow. Folly roll. And thank you guys for watching.